I'm Allison Jonjak, the Cranberry Outreach Specialist with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. These videos are the on-demand recordings of UW Extension and the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association's virtual brown bag lunch series. These monthly sessions offer growers and researchers a way to share timely and relevant information. We hope you'll enjoy and continue to engage with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grant Holly. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association. We are very happy to be able to partner with UW Extension to bring you the research needed to be able to navigate our ever-changing environment. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for their valuable time and leadership, the growers for joining us, and Allison for being the catalyst from which all of these sessions rely. Thank you so much.
All right, we have just rolled over to 12 o'clock, so I want to welcome everyone to the June 20th of 2025 Cranberry Brown Bag. We're focusing on having fewer speakers and a little more in depth. So field updates from the entomology, field updates in general from Dave Jones, and field updates in the weed world from Jed Colquhoun. I'm going to do a quick housekeeping, a quick welcome. I believe Anne is here from the Growers Association. So these are hosted jointly by the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension Cranberry Outreach Program, as well as the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association. We are grateful for everyone being willing to share their expertise here today and help foster conversation among all the growers. We are going to have closed captions on. If you would like to see closed captions, you should be able to choose them from that ... and say view closed captions. And there will be lots of opportunities to ask questions. So if you have a question, you can either unmute yourself and ask a question directly. You can chat the question to the whole room. If you want to ask a question anonymously, you can also use the drop down and say to Allison Jonjak, and I'll ask your question on behalf of you for everyone else anonymously. And I think with that, I will do a quick review of our agenda for today. We're going to open up with Dave Jones, the senior ag scientist with Ocean Spray, is going to give us an overview of what he's seen in the field, Protoventuria leaf spot, also a review of everything that he's seen in the field and with his scouting team so far this year. And then Jed Colquhoun is going to bring us into the 1 o'clock with everything that he's seen, especially in the quinstar and quinclorac world, as well as his underway horticulture field trials for this year. Jed, looking forward to hearing everything and anything quinstar, as well as all that's going on in your trial work and any other in-season herbicide updates.
Great. And can you see my slides
Yes.
now, Allison?
Yep, it is perfect.
Great. Thanks very much. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Like Dave, I'll try to keep my comments very brief and on target so that you can get back on the marsh as we talk about just a quick refresher on in-season weed management in cranberry. We're fortunate to have several different options available to us. But in today's presentation, I'll have just a couple of quick reminders about pieces like Weedar 64, Roundup, and Select Max, just so that you have those options in front of you and in front of mind as the season progresses. But as Dave and Allison mentioned, the majority of our time will be spent talking about quinstar, given its massive usage really across the industry during this growing season, and a lot of questions that I've heard from growers along the way. So quinstar, just a few kind of housekeeping general reminders to start with. Number one, the application rate can be up to 8.4 fluid ounces per acre per application. I think most folks that I've talked to have used that rate and have not reduced that from the maximum allowable use rate. 2 applications per year are allowed, but one reminder for you is they need to be at least 30 days apart. And that's allowed to allow the cranberry crop to be able to metabolize that load of quinstar. when we get into talking about some of the pieces that Dave alluded to in terms of the variability in weed control and such, you'll see a common theme from me among those based on our observations since we started working with this in 2008. And that is to be patient. Be patient. This is an extremely persistent herbicide, but it takes time. And that long control that we see is also similar in cranberry. It takes time for a cranberry to metabolize the herbicide also. So we need at least 30 days between applications. The pre-harvest interval is 60 days. So just keep that in mind. It's a relatively long one for cranberries as we get closer to harvest. And finally, be sure you're following your handler's instructions and whatever they may have communicated with you. We're able to use this because of some flux in the EU MRL situation, but it's still a very fluid situation, and we don't know exactly where that's going. So whatever guidance you've received, just make sure that you're following your handler's use instructions. So when is the best time to spray Quinstar? This is probably the most common question that I've had this spring. The key really, and I think this speaks to a lot of the variability that was seen in control in May, not only was the weather cold, and we'll talk about that when we talk about how Quinstar works, but also it's the timing to the weed species, the target weed species. And my observation over the years has been that we've had the best control when the weeds are emerged, maybe just at canopy height or even just slightly above that, but still small and actively growing. The mode of action of Quinstar is similar to Weedar 64 and Stinger. It's an auxin type herbicide, and it works on growing plants. So we need the plants active in growth. So in May, if you're applying this to weeds that were not actively growing at that time, there's really not much for Quinstar to work on. So they need to be actively growing, but small. And again, keeping in mind, this is a really persistent herbicide. I remember in the first couple of years when we had it and before MRL issues arose, sometimes people are seeing better control in the season after application. So that may also speak to some control you may see with northern St. John's wort growing back from vegetative tissue as opposed to seed. I'm certainly not going to tell you it's going to be a silver bullet, but our experiences in the second year, we were still getting about 60% control from the previous year's application. So very persistent, and be patient. Post-harvest fall applications, that's a question that came up as the MRL window opened up last year. So based on that grower question, we put out a trial. I sprayed it on November 6th, 2024, and we're observing it through the beginning of bloom now. The good news is there really was no crop response at all, no injury to speak of. The bad news is there wasn't much weed control either. So it doesn't seem to be paying immediate dividends. And again, this is an auxin type herbicide. It works on weeds that are actively growing. They were not actively growing on November 6th. We actually had snow on the dikes when I sprayed it. So with that late post-harvest application, I was hoping to see some persistent residual control, but we haven't yet. So we've not really, across all of the years that we've done this, and even in new plantings, we have not seen crop injury related to application timing. We really haven't seen any crop injury to speak of. Nothing more than maybe a transient twist to the plant, but nothing long-term at all. Obviously, we want to avoid application. We're into bloom now, obviously. For many reasons, I would advocate for not spraying herbicides right now. Our weeds are not growing so quickly that we need to rush out there to hit what came up yesterday. Adjuvants add risk during bloom. Traffic can disrupt bees. There are many reasons just not to make this a priority right now during bloom. So what happens if I apply Quinstar to established larger weeds? Thanks, Pam, for relaying that question this morning. I don't have a picture of what it looks like on a cranberry weed, but I have a lot of experience with this in some of the vegetable crops I work with. The example that you see on the slide is dicamba drift on a potato plant. Obviously, the potato is well established, it's flowering. You see the twist of the growing point. This is an auxin herbicide that works actively on the growing points of plants. So if the plant is well established, the Quinstar gets pumped or translocated to that active growing point, and that's where you'll see the twisting, epinasty, and cupped leaves most visible. The remainder of the plant looks great, as you see in this potato plant, and it won't show symptoms because it's been bypassed in this translocation or piping to the active growing point. The vegetative growth may be halted. The plant won't get larger necessarily because the growing point is so deformed, and seed production may be reduced or eliminated on some of our perennial weeds that produce seed, but you'll still see the green carcass of the plant out there. And again, just a reminder, I would never advocate for spraying a plant at this growth stage. We get the best control for sure on smaller targets, smaller weeds as they emerge and get to the canopy height where they can be intercepted by Quinstar. So we do still get a little benefit in maybe reducing further growth and seed production. And certainly we've twisted up maples like this, but you won't see the symptoms on the older established growth. Do I need to water in Quinstar? Another common question from the May applications in particular, where we weren't watering or irrigating as regularly. No, the regular irrigation schedule plus any precipitation is going to work just fine for this. The herbicide is taken up by both the foliage and roots, and foliar coverage is an important part of the weed control with Quinstar. So we get a nice mix of that by applying it, leaving it there until your next regularly scheduled irrigation. I certainly would not apply it before a gully washer like the last couple of days. But certainly the mix of the two, the foliar and root uptake and the persistence in soil and plants allows this compound to work in both situations. Again, keeping in mind the perennial weed control, as it even says on the label, may take 6 months or more to be evident. So what you do on that day of application is not as important as with some other soil residual herbicides, because it's going to be with us for quite a while. So what symptoms do I look for to know if I'm controlling those weeds? The dewberry on the left, that is Quinstar or quinclorac, the active ingredient. On dewberry, very similar symptomology as to what you would see with 2,4-D or say stinger on clover. Twisted stems, cupped leaves, drawstring leaf veins. That's where the leaf vein may grow longer than the interveinal tissue and creates a drawstringing effect. And the overall effect, when there's enough load of this synthetic auxin type herbicide in the plant, is it's stunted, reddened, chlorotic, and the longer term symptoms may take longer to appear on many perennial weeds, but a general stunted growth. So that's what we have for Quinstar, and somewhat related to that, but another very common question this year, tank mixing. I understand certainly it's not that much fun to make laps around the marsh, and it costs a lot of money to operate and fuel equipment to be able to do so. So tank mixing is a question that we get very commonly, and instead of going through every scenario of every possible generic cranberry pesticide adjuvant and plant health compound that you're being asked to apply, here are some general tank mixing considerations, questions to ask yourself before you load the tank. Do all the labels allow tank mixing? That's obviously the key one, to be able to follow the label. But I can tell you there are good reasons on labels that say, do not tank mix with any other product. It usually means either they are synergistic and have unpredictable crop damage, or physically incompatible, and will result in a tank of cottage cheese that's very difficult to manage. Are the adjuvant requirements compatible? I think sometimes that gets overlooked a little bit. And certainly we've seen train wrecks with products like clethodim, where the adjuvant requirements vary by generic product. So in that case, we want to make sure that what we're adding to, say, clethodim is compatible with the label requirement for something like Quinstar. If they aren't, don't do it. Again, are the pesticides physically compatible? And every label includes instructions on the jar test to be able to figure out if that is true or not. Are the timings optimal for all pesticides in the tank? So again, it's important, obviously, economically, to be able to save laps around the marsh, but not to the point where you're compromising control because the timings aren't optimal for everything in the tank. One big one related to Quinstar, and the questions we're getting asked about combining it with Callisto. Is there a benefit to applying products separately? In cranberries, we have a very long growing season, and there is a benefit to layering residual herbicides through time. You know, after bud break, maybe we apply the Callisto, wait, and then apply the Quinstar. And through that, we can achieve better season-long control than putting all of our eggs in one basket, let's say in May, and having nothing left to use to get through the growing season. So in many of the crops I work with, a lot of the focus now is on layering residual herbicides through time to get better season-long control. Are there any reports of antagonism, which results in poor pest control, or synergism, where you can get, again, crop injury from the combination of active ingredients and their additives? One big one that's been coming up a lot lately is you have a lot of folks knocking on your door selling you additives that aren't pesticides, whether they be for soil health, drift reduction, better coverage, whatever it might be. The only thing I would ask you is if there is objective evidence that they work, not the salesperson necessarily telling you, but do they have evidence from comparisons to industry standards and replicated statistically analyzed studies to be able to do that? Or is it simply anecdotal that the neighbor thought it may have worked pretty well? And I say that because recently, the worst train wrecks I've seen, whether it's poor pest control or crop injury, are the result of having 5, 6, or 7 things in one tank. And unfortunately, when I've asked folks why they're doing that, they say, I couldn't afford not to. It was a cheap additive. It seemed like it might help root or vine or whatever it might be. But without objective evidence, I have no way of being able to tell you if it would work or not. My general motto, many of you have heard me say this, but if in doubt, leave it out. The potential for damage is too great on a high value crop to be able to put things in the tank and not know what you might get out the other end. If you really want to experiment, pick a very small area and try it once and see if it might work. But if you're in doubt, don't put it in there. So just a couple of quick reminders as we close it up here on the other compounds that are available during the season. Clethodim or Select Max and the many other generic compounds. There are many new generic clethodims on the market. Number one, make sure they're labeled on cranberry. But number two, because of their formulation differences, they require different adjuvants. So don't assume what you used last year is the same for the new generic that you bought this year. Make sure you check to make sure cranberry is on the label, but whether it requires a non-ionic surfactant or something else. I think we all know on the call, don't apply between hook and fruit set. It'll fuse blossoms. I've seen crops with absolutely no bloom at all. And again, the best control is young, actively growing grasses prior to tillering. I just had a question about using clethodim on grasses that are going to seed. It won't do anything at all. It'll go to that growing point may prevent a little seed production, but it's not going to control the grass at that stage. Let's move on a little bit and talk about mosses. There have been more mosses this year than I've ever seen in my career. And one notable observation, thanks to Dave and others for pointing this out early in the season, we've seen a little bit of a switch from our typical sphagnum mosses, like you see on the right-hand side, which has been kind of the historical moss in our cranberries, often related to areas with a little less prolific drainage, areas that we see puddling, we see moss. However, now we're seeing a switch towards haircap mosses, like maybe they would have on the coasts or Massachusetts in particular. We have over 300 species of haircap mosses in the upper Midwest. So very common, but becoming even more common in cranberries and not related to poorly drained areas.
Jed, did you want me to run that poll now, or did you want to wait till the end?
Oh, you could do it now. That'd be great. Thank you, Allison.
Yep, absolutely. You can keep talking while I
You can run both of them, actually.
Okay, I am gonna.
Thank you.
I believe that this is now launched, but Jed can keep talking while people vote. And I believe it's usually our policy that growers can answer this. We prefer Wisconsin growers, so if you happen to be a Canadian or coastal grower, reserve your vote and just see what the Wisconsin folks say. Is that what you're hoping for here?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so Wisconsin growers are welcome to vote here.
Yeah, so one of the questions I've had is some of you know that in other production regions, they have a special local need herbicide registration of a product not registered for use in Wisconsin. Why is that not in Wisconsin? Number one, the registrant doesn't support this use. We've been experimenting with this compound since about 2008 also, because of an extremely high risk for crop injury. The application could only be to dormant cranberries, and our dormant season is just so much shorter than on the coasts. This is a product that may be applied between December and February on the West Coast, maybe in very early spring on the East Coast. In our experience, the difference between low injury, what I would call less than 5% injury, and extreme injury, greater than 40%, and no bloom, you could literally take harvest off if you got this wrong. It can be as short as 5 days between those two scenarios, low injury and high injury. Between applications, they're probably a little bit earlier than I see most commercial booms out there, late April to early May. A great example would be in 2008, we had 2 trials. The first application, April 28th, had less than 5% injury. The second timing that we tried it was May 5th, and we had 45% injury, and they never flowered. So that's why we don't have the compound here. We've attempted this for years and tried to find a way to make it work better. But simply put, it's not going to work in our production system in the way that we have it now. In the slide, you see these bare rectangular areas in a new planting. Those are different rates of this compound. And we had very, very little growth in a new planting trial. And I'll show you what it looks like in an established planting. This was in a good year. This was 2023. These rectangular 6-foot by 20-foot quadrats that I've outlined, you see they're greener. They're greener because the bloom isn't in there at all. These are different rates and replicates of that product, and we don't have any bloom. It's very clear in the field that this would not work and still be able to produce fruit. We're still dabbling with different ways, different combinations and formulations to see if we can find a way to make it work. I have it out again this year in both new plantings and established, but as it stands now, the registrant won't touch this. As you can imagine, there would be quite a few complaints with no harvest.
I can go ahead and
give,
do you want the poll? I'll give the poll results here. We've got 19 growers answered the first one. So we have Wisconsin growers, 2 out of those 19 is 11% are seeing haircap moss. 6 out of those 19 or 32% are seeing sphagnum moss. 9 out of 19, which is 47%, are seeing both. And then 2 out of 19, so 11%, do not have moss on their marsh.
Great, thank you.
As far as Quinstar use, 19 answered as well. So yes, 11 out of 18, so 61% of growers have used Quinstar in the 2025 growing season. 1 out of 18 have not used it yet, but they are planning on using it in the 2025 growing season. And then 6 out of 18, or 33%, do not have plans to use Quinstar right now.
Great. Thanks very much, Allison. I appreciate it. I've taken note of those.
I'll let you keep rolling.
Great. Just a couple of quick ones. I just put this up here to remind you, we still do have options in kind of the rescue world of our broadleaves, in particular that grow above the canopy. As the dog days of summer approach, Weedar 64 would be in the wiper application. Just a reminder, a 30-day pre-harvest interval with that. But again, there are options if we get towards that stage and still have weeds left. The same being for Roundup or glyphosate, keeping in mind that most labels don't allow surfactants. There's not any benefit to it anyways. And a 30-day pre-harvest interval. They don't allow surfactants because they're built with a surfactant in it. So it's unnecessary and an added cost with no benefit. So there are options at this stage, but I'll leave it at that, Allison, and see if there might be questions. Let me stop sharing my slide here.
Fantastic. Thank you for all of those, Jed. And those with questions, now is a great time to unmute yourself and ask, or type it into the chat, or use the anonymous way to ask in the chat with the drop down. We'll share my little end of presentation splash screen here.
I think everybody wants to get back on the marsh.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's boiling hot.
Fair enough. We will, yeah, I said on the eve of a heat wave, I do want to remind people that we will also have a brown bag. July brown bag is going to be July 18th. The summer field day is going to be August 15th in Millston, at the Habelman Brothers in Millston. And I believe we're celebrating the anniversary of theirs, and I apologize for not knowing off the top of my head which anniversary that might be, but I'm all looking forward to visiting Habelman's for that August 15th, which is a Friday this year. I think we'll go back to Wednesdays in the future. And then we'll be off on brown bags for September and October, and back in the swing of things again in November, December. But July 18th, we'll have a brown bag. August 15th, that summer field day. And then I will let everyone head back out into the fields unless we hear any other questions.